Every structure fails for a reason. Sometimes the calculations are wrong. Sometimes the materials are weak. And sometimes, the design hides a flaw no one wants to see. This story begins after the failure. Before the collapse. Before two civil engineering students. Working in the same department. Walking the same campus. Testing the same concrete. Realize the most dangerous walls they've built aren't made of steel or stone. They are emotional. Ask yourself this. If you knew something was going to break, would you still step closer? The University of Melbourne wakes slowly. Concrete paths breathe in the cold. Steel frames hold their silence. Before people arrive, the structures are already listening. Every building here was tested, pushed, stressed, approved. And yet, no one talks about the failures that almost happened. This story begins with two students who trust structures more than people. Luca walks the campus the same way every morning. Straight lines. Predictable paths. Eyes forward. He believes stability is earned through precision. If something fails, it's because someone ignored the math. Emotion, to him, is an uncontrolled variable. Charlotte walks the same campus differently. She notices cracks in pavements. Uneven steps. Small imperfections others ignore. She believes strength is about endurance. Not everything that stands is safe. And not everything that collapses is weak. They are in the same year. Same civil engineering department. Same level. But they have never spoken. Not yet. Inside the practical area, concrete is being mixed. Gravel. Sand. Water. Measured carefully. Students gather around steel molds. Reinforcement bars are placed with precision. This is where mistakes become permanent. Luca works quickly. Efficient. Silent. Charlotte works carefully. Slowly. Watching everything. She notices Luca before he notices her. Not because of who he is, but because of how he avoids eye contact. The first test sample cracks early. Too early. No one understands why. The numbers were correct. The materials were standard. Still, the fracture spreads. Because this is important. Failures don't always come from error. Sometimes they come from history. Charlotte steps back from the table. Luca steps forward at the same time. They almost collide. Almost. Their hands hover over the same fractured sample. And for a moment, neither moves. Something unspoken passes between them. Recognition? Or warning? The practical instructor assigns partners. Names are called. Groups form. Then, Charlotte. Luca. Silence. Not resistance. Not relief. Something else. They stand side by side, studying the same broken concrete. Neither blames the other. That's the first sign something is wrong. Outside, the campus looks unchanged. Students laugh. Birds circle old buildings. But inside this partnership, pressure has already begun to build. Because this is where foundations are laid. Not for buildings. For distance. For assumptions. For walls that will take years to undo. Ask yourself this. If the first thing you built with someone failed, would you trust the next structure? Or would you quietly prepare for collapse? Partnerships don't begin with trust. They begin with proximity. Charlotte and Luca stand at the same workbench. Same tools. Same data. Different instincts. No words are exchanged. None are needed. Silence becomes the first agreement. They begin again. Fresh concrete. New reinforcement. Same measurements. Everything is done correctly. And still, Charlotte watches the mix too closely. Because she has seen this before. Luca checks calculations twice. Then a third time. He doesn't look at Charlotte when he speaks to the instructor. He already senses instability. Not in the structure. In the space between them. The first load test begins. Weight increases slowly. Numbers climb. The structure holds. Then, a sound. Barely audible. A hairline crack. The room doesn't notice. Charlotte does. Her breathing changes. She steps back. Luca steps forward. Again. The crack stops spreading. The test is declared a success. But Charlotte isn't convinced. She never is. Because this moment matters. Some failures don't happen. They wait. Their work extends beyond the lab. Group meetings. Design reviews. Late evenings on campus. Melbourne glows outside the windows. The city looks safe. Luca stays late to rebuild models. Not because they failed. Because he expects them to. Charlotte leaves early. Not because she's afraid of failure. Because she recognizes patterns. During a bridge simulation, Luca changes a parameter. Small. Almost invisible. Charlotte notices immediately. She doesn't confront him. That's not her instinct. She adapts the design instead. The structure survives the test. Barely. The instructor praises their teamwork. Both look uncomfortable. Because teamwork wasn't what saved it. Anticipation did. Something is forming here. Not attraction. Not conflict. Something less obvious. Charlotte studies Luca when he thinks no one is watching. She notices how he avoids uncertainty. How he overcompensates with control. Luca notices Charlotte's exits. How she leaves before results are announced. How she never waits for validation. Neither asks why. Because asking would expose risk. During a site visit across Melbourne, they walk the same path. Still not together. Still not apart. Old buildings. New reinforcements. Structures strengthened after disasters no one remembers anymore. Reinforcement is never added for no reason. Charlotte pauses near a retrofitted wall. Her hand hovers over the surface. Luca notices. He almost asks something. Almost. That night, the model collapses in testing. Not theirs. Another group's. The room fills with noise. Charlotte doesn't look surprised. Luca doesn't look relieved. Because now they both know. Failure is coming. They just don't know where. When you sense something breaking long before it happens, do you warn others? Or do you prepare yourself to survive it? Pressure isn't always visible. Sometimes it creeps in silently. Like water seeping into concrete. Charlotte and Luca spend hours in the lab. Bridge models. Load simulations. Stress tests. Everything seems ordinary. And yet, nothing is ordinary. Charlotte adjusts beams. Every placement calculated. Every bar reinforced. Every angle precise. Luca watches. Not closely enough to interfere. But close enough to notice a hesitation in her hands. A hesitation she doesn't know she made. The models are loaded. Steel bends. Concrete cracks. Sensors beep. The numbers spike. The instructor murmurs approval. But neither Charlotte nor Luca relaxes. Because they know. The real test isn't structural. It's emotional. Out of the lab, the city stretches before them. Melbourne rooftops. Trams rattling across bridges. Laneways glowing in gold and shadow. They pass together. Side by side. Eyes forward. No words. Yet, both are aware of something unspoken. Something like recognition. Something like warning. During a field simulation on the outskirts of Melbourne, they inspect soil for foundation tests. Luca steps onto a slope. It shifts under him. Charlotte instinctively grabs a rod. Not his hand. Not his arm. The narrator leans closer. He wasn't in danger. She didn't save him. She saved herself from feeling unprepared. At night, Charlotte studies load-bearing calculations in her dorm. Luca stays in the lab, rebuilding models that passed. Why? Even he doesn't know. Load-bearing walls are meant to hold weight. Emotional walls are meant to hide failure. Some walls hold. Some crack. Some crumble completely without warning. A minor practical accident occurs. Not theirs. A colleague trips. Concrete falls. Noise echoes. Panic spreads. Charlotte freezes. Luca doesn't react. The silence between them thickens. The observer knows more than the participants do. Something has already shifted. Something dangerous is developing. During the next group project review, Charlotte notices a subtle misalignment in Luca's calculations. She doesn't correct it immediately. She lets it sit. Would you intervene? Or watch? To see if disaster teaches a lesson faster than guidance? Luca notices her pause. He doesn't ask. He doesn't tell. Something between instinct and curiosity roots him to the spot. Outdoors, they walk through the great ocean road. The 12 apostles loom like silent witnesses. The wind hits like an invisible load test. Charlotte stops. Luca stops. Distance grows. And yet, something pulls them together. Sometimes the strongest bonds form under strain. Sometimes under suspicion. Sometimes under neither. And that is the scariest of all. At the lab, the bridge model collapses. Not completely, but partially. The failure is subtle. Impossible to attribute. Both Charlotte and Luca sense it differently. She sees patterns. He sees risk. They both see each other. When the cracks are invisible, and the load is too heavy to measure, do you brace for impact? Or step closer anyway? The tension escalates without resolution. The audience is left guessing. Will the wall hold? Will they? Or will something unthinkable happen next? The sun is low over the Australian outback. Red earth stretches in every direction. Wind cuts like a sharp blade. The world seems empty. But it isn't. Charlotte and Luca are here for field work. Soil testing. Structural inspection. Practical experience. Routine, they tell themselves. Routine ends quickly. A bridge they are inspecting groans underweight. Luca steps forward to check a support beam. The metal trembles. Sand shifts under Charlotte's boots. The moment is too quiet to be safe. Time stretches. A single misstep. A small slip. And instinct takes over. Luca lunges. Charlotte jerks back. Concrete dust rises. Steel sings under stress. They are inches from collapse. This was not part of the plan. Or maybe it was. But no one knows which wall will fall first. Charlotte's heart races. Luca doesn't speak. He never does when it matters most. The world feels distorted. Every shadow stretches unnaturally. Every echo of metal against metal sounds like a warning. The bridge holds. Barely. Their breaths hang between them. Not words. Not comfort. Only awareness. Back at the camp, Charlotte withdraws. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't speak. Distance becomes a shield. Her walls rise higher than before. Luca notices. He wants to ask why. But asking risks exposure. Some walls cannot be questioned. Not all failures are structural. Some failures are emotional. Some are even more dangerous. Next morning, the field trip continues. The group spreads out. Charlotte walks slowly. Luca follows at a distance. Every step is measured. Every glance is a test. They are no longer students. They are observers. Each other's weaknesses, each other's patterns. Later, in the lab, they rebuild the failed bridge. Silently. Methodically. Both aware that something broke yesterday that no one can repair. not the bridge. Something inside them. Some walls aren't meant to be seen. Some cracks aren't meant to be noticed. Some moments change everything. Before anyone can understand what happened, the act closes with uncertainty. Charlotte sits alone outside, watching the red horizon. Luca enters the lab. One thing is clear. Nothing will be the same again. Some collapses are loud. Some are quiet. Some happen in the mind before the body notices. Charlotte walks the campus alone. Books underarm. Eyes distant. Hands brushing against walls as if testing for cracks. She doesn't know it yet, but a wall inside her has already failed. Luca works in the lab. Models stand perfect, precise, unmoving. But something inside him trembles. A calculation he cannot fix. Some failures aren't visible to anyone else. Some fractures echo through every structure you touch. The group assignment looms. A critical design project. Sustainability, safety, elegance. Charlotte and Luca are not paired, but their work overlaps. Their models collide. Paths cross. Minor errors become major warnings. One evening, a small accident occurs in the lab. Concrete spills. Steel bends unexpectedly. No one is hurt. And yet, Charlotte freezes. She sees the moment as more than physical. She sees instability. Not in the materials. Not in the lab. In herself. Luca notices. He almost speaks. Doesn't. They are both trapped. In silent recognition of something they cannot name. Collapse is rarely sudden. It creeps. It stretches. It waits for the smallest misstep. A structural review day arrives. All students present. Except for one minor failure in the project Charlotte observed. She doesn't mention it. She doesn't intervene. Luca notices the hesitation. He doesn't correct it either. Why? Because now, it's a test. The structure is fine. The failure is theoretical. But the emotional tension cracks open the space between them. Outside, Melbourne glows in late afternoon light. Shadows stretch across concrete and steel. The wind whispers across the city. Charlotte walks the same path she did before. Luca walks nearby. Distance close enough to notice, far enough to avoid contact. Neither speaks. Both feel it. Both fear it. Walls collapse in stages. First the foundation. Then the beams. Then the air itself seems to fracture. Some walls recover. Some never do. That night, Charlotte sits in the lab alone. She looks at the bridge models. Everything seems intact. Nothing seems wrong. Yet, inside, something shifted irrevocably. If everything appears stable, but you sense the core is failing, would you walk away? Or would you step closer, knowing the risk? In the final moment of Luca leaves the lab. Charlotte remains. Neither knows if the other noticed the subtle warning. Neither knows if they care. But one thing is certain. Nothing will ever be the same. Some walls cannot be ignored. Some walls demand repair. Even if the cracks inside you scream not to touch them. Charlotte receives the group project assignment. A final, critical structure, a bridge meant to symbolize strength and unity. And this time, she is paired with Luca. He enters the lab. She doesn't look up. He doesn't speak. The silence between them is a pressure test. The narrator leans in. Reinforcement is only useful when bonded. And neither of them knows if they can bond. The project begins. Calculations, materials, designs. Everything precise. Nothing flexible. But flexibility is exactly what they need. Charlotte notices small flaws in Luca's first sketches. She doesn't correct them immediately. Luca notices her hesitation. He doesn't ask why. Because asking risks vulnerability. And vulnerability is the one failure neither of them can survive yet. Outside, Melbourne sprawls in fading sunlight. Evening shadows stretch across concrete paths and old bridges. The world moves forward. They remain frozen in calculation. Some reinforcement is physical. Some is emotional. Both are dangerously unstable without attention. During a field test, a minor collapse occurs. Not catastrophic, but enough to remind them. Every structure, every relationship, every wall has a limit. Charlotte recoils. Luca braces. Neither expected the stress. The lab feels alive with tension. Even the steel beams seem to hum. Late at night, they work side by side. No words. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just shared effort. Every brush of a hand over a model, every adjustment of a beam, echoes with unspoken emotion. Can trust be rebuilt? When neither party knows if the other wants to be trusted. Charlotte's past begins to surface not in words, but in hesitation, avoidance, and the way she calculates risk. Luca notices. He doesn't comment. Because if he asks, she might retreat completely. And the narrator whispers. Some walls are meant to be left unexplored. Until the collapse forces you to enter anyway. During the final review for this project, the structure holds under stress tests. Not perfectly, but enough. The narrator leans closer. Sometimes success isn't perfection. Sometimes it's survival under unpredictable pressure. Charlotte and Luca leave the lab together. Not friends. Not enemies. Just two people aware of each other's cracks. But that awareness is heavier than any steel beam. When reinforcement comes, is it saving the structure? Or saving the builders? The day of the final presentation arrives. The campus is alive with students, instructors, and observers. Steel beams glint in the morning sun. Concrete gleams, precise, controlled. Deceptively stable. Charlotte arrives. Almost. She hesitates at the entrance. Her shadow stretches across the polished floor. Luca stands near the model. Calculating. Waiting. Not sure what he is waiting for. Some tests measure strength. Some tests measure endurance. Some tests measure heart. And this is all three. Combined. The first load is applied to the structure. Weight rises slowly. Sensors beep. The crowd murmurs approval. Everything appears perfect. Then, a subtle misalignment shifts. Barely perceptible. But enough. Enough to trigger instinct. Charlotte notices. She freezes. Luca notices. He doesn't react immediately. Sometimes failure is deliberate. Sometimes it is invisible. Sometimes it's a choice. Charlotte steps forward. She reaches for the misaligned beam. Her hand trembles. She hesitates. Luca watches her. He hesitates too. Neither of them knows if the other will act, or let the collapse happen. The structure wavers. A metallic groan echoes. Dust rises from stress points. The crowd leans forward, unaware of the danger. No one sees the tension between the two students. No one sees the unspoken fear, or the walls about to fall. Charlotte acts. Luca acts. Their hands brush over the model simultaneously. Correction applied in perfect synchronicity. The structure stabilizes. Not perfectly, but it holds. When two walls collide, and the pressure is unbearable, do you fight to keep them standing? Or do you risk everything to rebuild together? They step back. Not friends. Not lovers. Not even colleagues. Just aware. Aware that their walls are thinner now. Aware that collapse was always a possibility. Aware that trust is as fragile as reinforced concrete. Some walls aren't meant to fall completely. Some walls aren't meant to stay intact forever. Some walls are lessons. And lessons leave cracks you cannot ignore. Charlotte walks away after the presentation. Luca follows, at a distance. Neither says a word. Neither needs to. The audience sees them in the same frame. Close. But separate. Everything is unresolved. Everything is unstable. Everything is possible. The final test isn't about the bridge. It's about who survives the pressure. And who dares to step closer once the walls finally crack. The sun hangs low over Melbourne. Golden light stretches across old buildings, concrete walkways, and steel bridges. The world looks calm. But inside the lab, and inside Charlotte, the air is brittle. Charlotte hesitates outside the lab. She has thought about this moment all night. Every step forward feels like walking on cracked concrete. Every breath feels like a load test. She wants to leave. She wants to stay. Luca enters the lab. Everything seems normal. Everything seems safe. But nothing is safe anymore. Some walls aren't just physical. Some walls aren't even visible. Some walls are made of fear, silence, and unspoken longing. And those are the hardest to break. The final project model waits. The structure holds perfectly. But neither of them looks at it. They look at each other. Charlotte steps forward. Not for the model. Not for the test. For him. Her hand hovers over a critical beam, almost brushing Lucas. The world seems to pause. Vulnerability is heavier than steel. And far more dangerous. Luca notices the hesitation. For the first time, he doesn't step back. For the first time, he doesn't calculate the risk. They work together, silently, to stabilize the model. Not words. Not apologies. Just presence. Just synchronicity. The bridge holds. They hold. Neither perfect. Neither safe. Outside, Melbourne's streets glimmer in twilight. The city is alive. The wind carries echoes of every step they've taken. Every avoidance. Every glance. Some walls are built to protect. Some walls are built to isolate. Some walls are meant to fall. When they fall, do you step back? Or step closer? Charlotte looks at Luca. No words pass. No promises. Just acknowledgement. Luca looks at Charlotte. No answers given. No decisions made. Just recognition. The walls are down. Not completely. Not safely. But enough. Something new exists in the space between them. Uncertain, unstable, and real. Graduation day. The University of Melbourne shines in golden light. Caps fly. Cameras flash. The crowd celebrates. And yet, two students walk quietly through the campus. Charlotte and Luca. Some walls are lessons. Some walls are scars. Some walls are doors disguised as barriers. Today, some doors might finally open. They walk side by side. Not together. Not apart. Neither touches. Neither speaks. The past year hangs between them. Every misstep. Every avoidance. Every test. Every collapse. The lab, the field work, the models. All memories etched like cracks in concrete. And in those cracks, something lives. Charlotte glances at Luca. He doesn't look back immediately. Time stretches. Each second feels like a load test. Some walls fall because they are pushed. Some walls fall because they are ready. Some walls fall because someone finally decides to step closer. They reach the edge of the campus. A steel bridge stretches ahead. The sun reflects off the water below. Charlotte stops. Luca stops. Distance still present feels smaller than before. They could speak. They could step away. They could rebuild the walls. Instead, they simply stand. Side by side. Silent acknowledgement. Nothing is resolved. Nothing is certain. But something has shifted. The walls aren't gone. They aren't fully down. But a space exists now. For trust, For risk, for connection. The final shot. The campus stretches into the horizon. Melbourne glows in soft evening light. Two figures walk into uncertainty. Together, in silence. Some walls aren't meant to last forever. They are meant to teach us when it's safe to let them fall.